takes me a while because I'm still new to this on the live on Facebook part. Okay, starting Zoom. You know, the only thing about this is it doesn't really give you an opportunity to like share on few pages.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Unless somebody else shares it, right?
Yeah, if you shared it on your page when we go live, that would, you people would be able to see it as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just gonna tag you.
So okay.
Not yet, it's not live yet.
Okay.
All right. Oh, I can cross-port to more pages. Okay, save, go live. I'm gonna have to shut all the bangs and noises off. So I think it says we're live on Facebook. Let's make sure. Let's make sure. But yes, it looks like I'm live. It says we're live. Okay, great. Here we go. Just gonna turn this down. All right. All right, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Politics and Prosecco. As you can see, I am joined by a very special guest for our first segment, Mayor Dr. Yvonne Spicer, Mayor of Framingham. Sorry, my phone's going off at the same time. Mayor Dr. Yvonne M. Spicer, who is the mayor of Framingham, but I also want to give you just all her credentials around being mayor. She's the first mayor of Framingham. She's the first Black woman popularly elected in the entire Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And let me tell you why that's important, because as we go into a mayoral race in Boston, I want people to be aware that there was somebody who kicked that door down, and that is my friend, my former boss, my mentor, Dr. Yvonne Spicer. And before she was mayor, y'all, she was already giving out Black girl magic. So she was already STEM before STEM was cool. And I'm just happy to have you finally on the show. So thanks for being here.
I am thrilled to be here, and thank you so much for inviting me. You know, I say to myself too that when I look at women like you that are carrying the baton, and you're running with that baton, and it just makes me smile. So, you know, just as much love and admiration as you have for me, I have for you. So thank you for having me on.
Thank you for being here. So as you know, this is Politics and Prosecco. So we want to know what you're sipping on. But before we get there, I want to announce that tonight's episode is sponsored by Drinks with Your Enclave. Ta-da! Product placement. And I am very proud of this business because, one, it's Black owned and it is LGBT owned by a friend of mine named Ernest Offley. In the link below after the show, you can find out where you can purchase these. I'm sipping on the Jalisco, which is tequila based. So y'all know I'm about to get it popping up in here. And it even comes with these cute little glasses. Look at Ernest, right? Like always trying to have everything going. So since it's tequila based, we're just gonna do that much so far. But so tell us what you're sipping on.
Well, the show is called Politics and Prosecco, so I thought I'd be consistent with the name of the show and bring along Prosecco. So, here's to you.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey to the seat of mayor and what you've been doing so far?
You know, this journey, and sometimes I do look at it as a layering of a lifelong journey of excellence, of learning more, doing more, stepping outside of comfort zones. And as you mentioned, my background is in STEM, technology and engineering. I was a classroom teacher. I was an administrator. Prior to becoming mayor, I was the vice president of the Museum of Science. And that allowed me to interact with business leaders, political leaders, and travel around the world looking at ways in which to improve society, whether through education, classroom opportunities, but also working closely with other nonprofit entities. And part of that experience brought me back to Framingham. I've lived in Framingham for the last 36 years. And I was always involved in some form of fashion in the political scene, whether I'm volunteering or serving on town meeting. And the moment that we decided that we were going to become a city, and I was asked, would you ever consider running for mayor? And so at that time, I certainly was enjoying my job at the Museum of Science. I was doing a lot of great things. And I really thought long and hard that with everything I had done in leadership over the last 30 years, doing a startup division of the Museum of Science, I felt like I could bring something to this community that was unique, forward thinking, and certainly using my leadership skills. I mean, my doctorate is in leadership. And so, you know, bringing all of that to the table, I decided to make a run for it. And I'm real grateful I did too. And people jumped in to help out and raise funds and campaign and door knock and you know, and I was victorious. I mean, from a field of that was 7 candidates, whittled down to 2, and I won with close to 60% of the vote. And
say it again, one more time. Say it again.
Nearly 60% of the vote. So, and
I think so. People always ask how you and I linked together because we really weren't orbiting in each other's world at all. And so Dr. Spicer sat on a board at the Treasury, which I was a part of. I instantly fell in love with her and was trying to figure out a way into her world. And anybody who knows me knows I am extremely strategic in all the things that I do. I heard Dr. Spicer was running, but I also heard that she was not going to run. I cold called her up one day and said, I will work for free if you stay in this race. And I started off as your scheduler and sort of moved my way into more strategy sessions and some messaging with Wes Ritchie and Audrey Hall and Erica Mash and Nadia and Norma. It was a team of us who got together. But our story it seemed like we clicked. The trust was almost immediate. And we just clicked, and I knew it was about really working with other Black women. Because it's one thing to say, I want more women to run for office. It was a whole other thing to actually get out there and do it. And part of that, and the reason why I wanted to work for free, is because a lot of times when women of color run, we don't have the money to do it. And we don't have the money to pay fancy firms or consultants to do it. I knew that I could do scheduling because it's what I had done anyway. I knew that was going to be my strong suit. So that's what I offered up. And from that, you saw my skill set and led me into other things. So I'm always grateful to you for that opportunity, but also the message behind it is when women of color stand together and coalesce around each other, we can do big things. And I think that that's the message going forward, even as we see this melanin wave and we see all these women of color running across. And you saw this. I mean, your Essence magazine, shout out y'all, she's in Essence magazine. Your Essence magazine photo shoot with the other Black mayors that people may not be as familiar with. Although, you know, I'm a Vi Lyles fan. You know, she's like my second favorite mayor.
I got an autograph for you. No, I got an autograph.
You did. I still have that. It's going in my new office. So I am just so proud to see determined Black women who are bringing added value to what we already have in our DNA, which is poise and grace and smart. We're smart as people. And women of color have consistently been on the front line when it comes to, the civil rights movement, the suffragette movement. It's always been women of color who have been on those front lines. So I am always thankful for that. So tell us a little bit about what you're currently doing in Framingham, specifically around vaccinations, because many people may not know that Framingham has a very small percentage of people of color, but it has a huge Brazilian community. Mm-hmm. And so as we sort of try to shine light on darkened spaces, specifically around the pandemic and getting vaccinated, can you talk a little bit about what you're doing there?
You know, one of the things, this pandemic has definitely wreaked havoc, not only in Framingham, but other communities. And our percentage of cases are largely centered in our Black and Brown communities, and certainly parts of our communities that are underprivileged and underserved. And that has always troubled me. And as we roll out vaccine, we have also noticed that these are the folks that are least likely getting the vaccine at this present moment. So right now, Framingham is one of the 20 targeted communities that what is called equity access to vaccine is going to be given, where there's some targeted effort to not just, say we're going to vaccinate people, we're going to bring the vaccine right to the neighborhoods, right in the communities with the folks that need it the most. And so we're part of a network, and we've immediately stood up a network of people who work in the community, whether the health networks, the community centers, the apartment complexes, to strategize around, just as we did with food security, how do we roll this vaccine out to the community? How do we start to educate? And I'm going to do a little PSA here. There's actually going to be a Zoom meeting sponsored with the Greater Framingham Community Church and Reverend Lloyd.
I love him.
And being able to educate people on why take the vaccine. So this coming Monday night at 6 o'clock, it's geared towards African-American community with African-American medical professionals answering questions and giving information. So, and we're going to do one for the Latino community as well as for the Brazilian community. So speaking Portuguese. And that's one of the things that I say is so critically important. Education, but also, and I want to tap into the notion, yes, there is some apprehension about taking a vaccine. However, what we're learning is that there are more people that want the vaccine than don't want the vaccine. They've just not been able to have access to transportation, online, registering for an appointment online. So all of those have been factors that have limited the opportunities. And so we're doing some targeted effort with the Black and Brown community, people that are homebound, disabled, that are lacking homes. And so, and doing very creative things, whether it's a mobile vaccination center, looking at ways in which we can partner with those folks that are working day to day with folks that might need those kinds of services. The other thing that I'm real happy about that, and I've requested this from the state, is let's start to disaggregate the data by race, who's getting vaccinated, and being able to look at my city of Framingham and pretty much create a heat map to say, where are people getting vaccinated? Now, I'm pleased that the state is rolling out that data. Right now in Framingham, approximately 24,000 people have had one first dose of a vaccine. And the vaccines that have been coming to Framingham is Moderna. And about 8,000 people have had a second dose. But looking at that data, we are needing to look deeper and drill down deeper. How is that reaching people of color? And what we got today, I got this report today, we are reaching some people of color. The Latino community is probably the least served at this point. But
why do you think that is?
I think it's also education. It's access, it's education. It's also being able to say, if I go get a vaccine, who's going to watch my kids? You know, these are the realities that people live with. I don't have a car. We have one car. My husband had to take a car to go to work. So these are some realities. And once again, we're providing transportation. If you can get to one of the max vac sites, we'll provide transportation. So we're doing all of that in Framingham. And I'm pretty pleased with the way in which we have responded to this pandemic, whether it be food security programs, rental assistance programs, utilities. I declared an executive order, eviction moratorium order. And I also declared racism a public health crisis. So, these are things that, help drive the needle on where we need to go, where we can go, where we should go. And that's what I'm pretty proud of.
So listen, here on Politics of Prosecco, we get a little down into the streets. Yeah. We start to ask questions about what the streets are saying. Mm-hmm. So, listen.
Now, I'm from Brooklyn, right?
From Bed-Stuy.
Yes. And they're proud of that.
Yes. So, it must be hard to be the first. It's a tough role. Being mayor isn't easy. And so for those of you who don't know, I also served as Mayor Spicer's senior advisor once she got in office in her administration. And so having sort of going from a campaign bird's eye view to what the mayor's job was to actually seeing it upfront and personal, two totally different worlds. And it was, every day was a different decision that needed to be made. And on top of really having, people detractors or people who just aren't sure of what the job entailed. What do you know now that you didn't know then? And what do you think people don't know about you since you've been in this role? If you're talking to a voter who just moved to Framingham 3 months ago and don't know the context or the history of you coming into that seat, talk to them about what do you know now that you didn't know then? And who are you? Like, what is it that you bring to this role?
Wow, there's so much to unpack in there. First and foremost,
it's what we do here. It's what we do.
Well, first and foremost, I would say to a new resident coming to Framingham, Framingham is a wonderful place to live. And it's a great place to raise your family and get involved. I would also encourage them to get involved in their government. You have a voice, and my office will listen. I will listen. Also, I would say to them too that, before you make an assumption, check the facts. And the facts are there. We're transparent. We put out information about everything from budget, how money gets spent, an annual report. I do community conversations. And prior to COVID, one of my favorite ways to communicate with people is to actually go visit them in the neighborhoods. I'd move from coffee shop to sit and have coffee with you. And you get a chance to ask me your burning questions. So those are the things that I look forward to us doing again soon, is having that dialogue and looking for those spaces. And what I've tried to do over the last couple of years is look at what's missing in Framingham, look at what's there and how do we build upon the assets of Framingham, but also fill the cracks. And some of the things that I look at, for example, during this pandemic, one of the things I learned very quickly is that we have some holes and some weaknesses when it comes to neighborhood services that we could stand up fairly quickly, and it's wraparound kinds of services. So I'm going to be working on that in this next budget to look at how do we create a space, an office of neighborhood services and resiliency, because people may need help now, but they're not, that's a temporary thing. How do we help them move forward? What are those other things we need to tap into? The other thing that I love to think about too is that, I ran this campaign on looking at 5 pillars, whether it's economic development, a transition, a smooth transition, because that's one thing, is that from going from town to city, investing in education, public spaces, and last but not least, investing in people. How do we best invest in people? And I've stayed true to those 5 pillars. And every year I've tried to do something that address, some inequity within our city, whether it's new parks in South Framingham, cleaning up environmental hazards in South Framingham.
Right.
All of those things have been happening. And so every year that I do the state of the city, I have a chance to reflect on what happened. And despite COVID and everything, we got a lot of stuff done last year, and I'm pretty proud of that. And you can see I'm beaming about it. I'm smiling because I know I have hope, and I have hope that we will recover and we will get better. And just even thinking about some of the things that I want to continue to do in our city: new housing, inviting new people to come in, a vibrant downtown. All of these things are underway. They're irons in the fire. And I'm just kind of keeping them fires burning and keeping the momentum and the excitement about our city.
And so let's talk about some fun stuff.
Yes. Don't ask. No.
I'm going to be good because it's Friday.
Okay.
But so listen. So as you know, there's a huge race happening in Boston.
Yes.
I know that you obviously are probably getting a lot of calls, a lot of, questions asked. No matter who wins the race, what is your best advice that you can give to someone coming into the role of mayor? And I understand that Boston and Framingham are very different, but the work itself is not.
Yeah.
So what advice would you have for a Kim and Andrea, Michelle and Anissa, a John Barrows? I'm not going to mention other folks because I'm shady. So yeah.
I would say to anyone coming into this role, make sure you're grounded. Ground yourself in something that you believe in. And whether it's your spiritual background, your family, a combination of all, your spouse, because this work is hard. And having the support of other people, and also layer your support, because there's a network of mayors that I talk to, other women mayors, other mayors here in Massachusetts, and I will say the mayor of Boston, ever since I've been mayor, has been very supportive of me. And I've always appreciated that, as well as other Mayor Curtatone from Somerville.
Shout out.
Yeah, there's been a number of mayors that I can call and ask questions, and we've done that over the last year. I think it's also important to know what you believe in and what you value, because there are so many competing priorities coming at you every single day. And there's only so much you can do in one day. And I think, once again, this is where my engineering background comes in. You have a problem.
Wait, pause. Did y'all hear her? She said engineering. Listen, because this makes me so happy, because I think a lot of times people just see elected officials, but they don't know that they had a life before that. So I just want to shout out again, engineering background, something we don't hear enough of. So I need you to just go ahead and own that over and over and over and over again.
Absolutely. And it's about problem solving. It's how do you solve problems? And that's you look at an issue every day, you say, what can I implement for a solution? You look at possibilities, you know that no matter what solution you implement, it has a consequence. And can you live with that consequence too? And you move forward. And if it's working, keep with it. If it needs to be modified, modify it. Right. And that's pretty much how I do things every single day. And I would also say, listen carefully to your team, and listen very carefully for all of the options. Don't make haste decisions. Get the facts before you have to.
And maybe understand that you're maybe not be the smartest person in the room at that moment. There's someone that knows maybe a little bit more than you about a certain subject. I used to think about this when, there would be something that would come up with DPW. I'm not an expert in the Department of Public Works. I barely like to take the trash out. So I don't know all of these things, but I think it's important to, like you said, listen and respect the people who are in the room who may know just a little bit more than you, because yes, you are the mayor, and it's you who has to fall on the sword at the end of the day, no matter what it is. However, if your team feels respected, you will rise. That is, then I don't even think that's just politics. I think that's, see, look, already I'm starting to burp.
I love it.
I think that's
you also know that's how I work with you all, my whole team. I gave you space to grow, and I love it.
Because my tagline was, "You're coming in between me and my greatness."
Yes, and I would never want to get between you and your greatness. So I always knew to kind of give you the space to work on projects, and that's one of the things I loved about you and all of my other teammates that you got a chance to work with, is that you all came to the table with your best ideas, your thoughts, the pushbacks where I needed them, and I respected that about you. And so those are the good things.
I was like chief pushbacker.
and it has pushed me and propelled me into other ways of thinking and doing. Yeah. So that's the gift that I think is so important in any leadership role, is that you realize you're not the only leader in the room, and you and my job, and you've heard me say this before, my job is to grow other leaders. Right. That is my job, is to grow you out of this job. As you just have grown out of your job that you used to have into a whole nother world. And that makes me smile. Yeah. That really makes me smile.
How do you view these next couple of years? I know you have to launch soon, because your re-election race is next year.
It's actually this year.
Is it this year?
Yeah, it's 2021. And so, I will say I have been so keenly focused on trying to work through this pandemic. And I will be perfectly honest, also trying to watch what was happening at the federal level with the elections and so forth at the federal level. It just coming up for air, because really at moments working 7 days a week with my entire leadership team to address issues within our community. How are we dealing with COVID? How are we managing the day-to-day operations? So those were really pressing issues. And, according to the charter, I can be mayor for 3 consecutive terms.
12 years.
4 years for 12 years. So it looks like I have at least another 8 years and 9 months to go that I can do this. But,
somebody's grinding their teeth right now.
But, the one thing that I can honestly say is that no one could have ever imagined leading a city during a pandemic, and not to mention being the first mayor, all of those things. But I feel like we're come through a tunnel, and I see the light. I see the light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm still standing and shoulders back and said, let's go. And every day it's like, let's go. And no matter what has happened, I know we all did our very best. And some of the things that I'm so proud of, because when I look at other cities that are modeling things after work we've done in Framingham, I smile about that, really. Yeah. And also, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that along with the pandemic, we had racial uprising, and we're having it right now again.
That's right.
It's not going anywhere. And having to still make sure that you are making the people in the community feel okay. Mm-hmm. That's one of the things too, and that you're addressing issues. You're not shying away from it, and I don't shy away from anything. But at the end of the day, my job is to build a better Framingham to the best of my ability. And that's what I hope to do. And I will continue to do as long as the residents of Framingham will have me here. We'll continue to do that.
Yes. So I know you like to keep it above the fray. And, like, that's a cute little bite.
I'm not petty.
Well, listen, but I am. So, now that you've spoken to your voters, what do you tell your detractors, people who just can't get beyond, either your skin tone, or they can't get beyond you being the first? What do you tell them about the work that you've done and that the work you will continue to do? That's important, because everybody has detractors. Yeah. And some of us have what I like to call surprise haters, people who like all your stuff on Facebook and Instagram, but secretly are like, I hate you, like surprise haters. Those are my favorite people, because it's like, I don't even know you and you hate me, so I must be doing something right. But what do you say to your detractors? People who are like, no, I'm never going to get beyond you being mayor of Framingham, or even though you lived in Framingham for now, what, 27, 30 years?
36 years.
36 years. You're not from Framingham. Like what are you telling your detractors?
Well, first and foremost, I say the voters spoke loud and clear. Almost 60% of them said, we do want to see her move this forward. And I also see that as so many things about my background and my experiences are the strengths that I bring to this table. And my focus every single day is, how do I make Framingham better? What can I do today to move Framingham forward? And either, and this is the other thing, I am a collaborator. I am one who loves to work with people. I'm a teacher. I will be patient with people. And if you choose not to be wanting to work in that vein, then I'm going to keep moving and look for those that will work with me on that. And so, as my grandmother used to say, you don't need to get in the gutter, but you just keep above the fray and your work will speak for itself. And yes. and last but not least,
I don't mind slapping a few people with my accomplishments though. I don't mind it at all, because sometimes you got to remind folks how badass you exactly are. And I'm learning that more and more as we get, as you elevate or as you ascend to different things, or just try something new. I'm quick to remind somebody, I didn't ask your permission to be Jaquetta, so I'm not going to start now. But I certainly will remind somebody in a heartbeat who I am and what they're dealing with.
Absolutely.
Hi, hater.
And I, well, the one thing I do know is that I stand on the shoulders of many who came before me, who could never have imagined the life I live today. And my great-grandmother was an enslaved woman. And so I think of her, and I think of all of the women that have held me up and supported me along the journey. And so, I keep that front and center. The detractors don't even get into that. You can't even get into this space. And I just keep it moving. Well,
I'm so glad that you came on the show. I'm so happy that you're here and that you wanted to celebrate and show this time with us. I wish you all the luck on your reelection. I'm with you. Thank you again, with your Spicer colors on, the blue and the yellow. Here for that. And so again, cheers to you. I would cheers, but I'm out. So I'm going to go ahead and re-out.
I adore you. I absolutely adore you. Remember, the future is female. So keep that in mind.
That's right. Thank you so much, Dr. Spicer.
Are you welcome?
Hey,
have a great evening.
All right. See you later.
Bye.
Bye. All right, everybody. Our next guest is in the waiting room. She is here. I once again want to say that we are sponsored tonight by Drinks with Your Enclave. I'm drinking the Jalisco, which is tequila based. Y'all could already tell because I already started hiccuping. So we're going to go ahead and admit our next guest. There she is.
Yay! Hey!
Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley is in the building. Y'all should stop by.
Hello.
I'm living for the pink today. Okay. Well, come on, Prosecco. Look at God. What are you doing?
Now, how did you know that was Prosecco and not sparkling water?
Because I'm a Prosecco fan. I can spot Prosecco a mile away.
It is Prosecco.
Thank you so much for coming on and sharing this time with us. We are so thrilled to have you here and so honored that you are a Congresswoman. So I want to get into it, of course, and I want to celebrate you, but I wanted to tell a little bit about our history.
Okay.
Because people may not know that you and I actually knew each other before you were a Congresswoman. So everyone obviously knows that Congresswoman Pressley was a Boston City Councilor at large. She was the first Black woman elected to an at-large seat in the history of Boston, which was a big feat at the time. And I got to know the Duchess. I call Ayanna's mom the Duchess, Sandy, but I call her the Duchess. I got to know the Duchess, and the Duchess and I would do campaign stuff. I would drive her around, And she was just a thrill to be with, but she was so knowledgeable at the same time. And you are such a reflection of who her spirit is that I miss her often. and I'm sure you do too. But every time I see you and I see something wonderful, I always think what the Duchess would say about where we all are right now.
Wow.
And, you know,
I want to say thank you to you, Jaquetta, because you gave my mother family and community here. You know, this Boston is an adopted home for me and had been for a long time, but it had only been a place that my mother had visited. But once I was running for office and then subsequently elected to the council, and then later because of her leukemia treatments, we transitioned all of her care here. And, you know, while I would be out busy doing what she believed my entire life was what I was meant to be doing, yes, and she sacrificed right alongside me, you were giving her family and community and anchoring, and she had so much love for you. And so
thank you.
I thank you for that. And of course, it's a permanent heartbreak. I miss her every day, but I tell you what, when I'm really missing her and I'm feeling that heartache, I just look in the mirror.
Come on.
You know how you have those moments where you're like, I am really becoming my parents.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I noticed the other day, I have a lot of the same moles on my face that my mom has on hers. My mom and I have a dimple at the side of our lip where my nephew says that it's in the wrong place. But yeah, you absolutely start to look like your mom and embody who she is, which is a good thing. You know, if your mom did the right thing by you, that shows. So well, listen, we are
really quickly though, happy Women's History Month.
Yes.
And again, just like Black History Month, you know, women's history is American history. And that history is not just for the iconic trailblazers that we pay tribute to, but it is for our great grandmothers and our grandmothers and our mothers and our aunties and our sisters, and the women in community every day who are on the front lines, who in the midst of this pandemic have been leading on collective care and mutual aid. I always remind people that history is not static and one-dimensional. It is dynamic, and it is all around us, and it is certainly all around us in the Massachusetts 7. And I do want to take 2 seconds of political privilege, as it were, to wish a happy birthday to Pisces Nation and to Winelia Rivera and Jessie Mermal, respectively, who are birthday twins, and 2 women who have had a formidable presence in electoral politics and the work of social justice, and certainly in my life.
Jessie's a big Judy Garland fan, so I sent her a few Judy Garland gifts today just to celebrate because she loves Judy Garland. So listen, so we wanted to have you on because one, we want to celebrate you, but also I thought this would give everybody an opportunity to have more of a personal view of what you're doing in Congress. I think people see Congress from the bird's eye view. They see, you know, clips on TV or they see testimony and they're not exactly sure what the job encompasses, but also what you're doing for the Massachusetts 7. And so I wanted to shout you out because you've got a few committeeships now. And one is very important, which is the finance. I'm not gonna get this right. Is it finance and oversight?
I'll explain it. It's 2 committees. So there's the Financial Services Committee, which is, you know, what you would immediately think based upon the titling, right? Which is all of our financial institutions, our monetary policy, but also under the Financial Services Committee, we tackle everything from housing to student debt, to the racial wealth gap, to diversity and inclusion within financial institutions and the banking industry. Did I mention student debt? So all of the issues, the reason why I'm very blessed, Jaquetta, because I have been walking the halls of Congress and sitting at policy and decision-making tables with John Lewis, now that he is an ancestor, but was able to legislate with him and learn from him while he was still serving. Elijah Cummings, who's now an ancestor, but chaired the Oversight and Reform Committee, which is the other committee that I'll sit on, and we can talk about that momentarily. And the Financial Services Committee, which is chaired by Maxine Waters. This is not only a historically diverse and representative Congress, but we have an unprecedented number of Congressional Black Caucus members serving as committee chairs. And so the fact that in my freshman tenure in the 116th Congress, we're now in the 117th, that I got to serve on 2 committees chaired by Black members.
Yes.
You know, Elijah Cummings and Maxine Waters. And they both recruited me for those committees. I was not pursuing oversight and reform, and I was not pursuing financial services. I actually wanted to serve on education and workforce.
Okay.
But I was, you know, elated when Chairwoman Waters approached me about financial services, because the Massachusetts 7th, as you all know, we know the devastating data, but you live it every day. Yes. This is a diverse, vibrant, dynamic district, and one of the most unequal in the country. Yes. When it comes to health outcomes and the racial wealth gap. And so, as I've said so often, the inequities and disparities and the racial injustices that persist in the Massachusetts 7th, a district that is 53% people of color, 40% foreign born, nearly 40% single female headed household, they're not new. Neither are they naturally occurring. They were legislated. And so that is why I say policy is my love language, because it is policies that created these conditions.
And to be clear, when you say legislated, they were redlined into.
But I just mean, well, when I say hurt and harm, I'm speaking of redlining, which is also something we address in the Financial Services Committee, which is why we're pushing to modernize the Community Reinvestment Act. But I'm talking about across the board.
Okay.
Disproportionate hurt and harm has been foisted onto Black Americans and other marginalized communities, and it was legislated. Yeah. It was legalized hurt and harm. Right. So if we are legislating hurt and harm that has created disparate outcomes in health, in a racial wealth gap, in education access, then we can legislate equity. Yes. We can legislate healing. We can legislate justice. So, you know, the thing about Black Lives Matter and the movement, and I get very uncomfortable, and even though I love a good statement tee too, but I make sure I at least buy it from a Black vendor. Hello, somebody.
Listen, come on, Pride Clothing.
Okay. Yes. The monetization of our oppression, and also the monetization and the commercialization of our liberation, means that people can be shallow in their activism.
That's right.
We are grateful that people are buying t-shirts. Yes. We're grateful for their allyship in the form of retweets and likes and hashtags. But the only receipts that matter right now are policies and budgets.
That's right.
We have never codified the value of Black lives in a budget.
Never. So what is it that, so what you bring to the table as a committee person here, how does that translate back to the Massachusetts 7th? I think that's where people are either aren't educated enough about what you do in DC and how you bring that back to the district. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, I'll try. I mean, I set federal policy.
That's that.
I mean, that's what I do. Right. And in the 116th Congress, I have the record for introducing more bills than any other freshman member in Congress.
Yes, and that's important to know, people, because what's important is that the members are working for you. So when Congresswoman says that she's introducing more and more bills, that's important to know that your voices, what you're asking her to do, what you're telling her to be aware of, she's speaking that into existence when she's introducing these bills. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. But that's because I'm intentional about that engagement, because I believe the onus is on me to engage community and not the other way around. And so when we pre-COVID, that is why, you know, my political committee money was spent on providing on-site and free childcare at community meetings, providing language translation, sign language and disability access, providing free foods, free meals, eliminating any barrier to engagement, but also proactively going after those closest to the pain. Look, I stay uncomfortable on purpose because I don't want to be complacent. You know, and people say that I'm the first Black woman elected to the Massachusetts delegation. It's deeper than that. Prior to my election, there had never been a person of color, period, to represent the Commonwealth of Massachusetts in the U.S. House of Representatives. That took 230, period. Now, we were very fortunate in the Senate. On the Senate side, we had Ed Brooke. Right. We had Ed Brooke, and we had Mo Cowan, who was appointed but not elected. But in the House delegation, there was never a person of color for 230 years, ever. So, you know, and that's not a testament to me. That's a testament to our growing electoral power.
Yes.
But also, when I was elected to the Boston City Council, you got that accurate. First woman of color, first Black woman elected to that body. That took 100 years. So the reason why I share this is not to give me a pat on the back. Right. It's because it's damning that it took that long in a city and a commonwealth that tout their progressive bona fides for strides in marriage equality and healthcare reform, but it continued to lag behind when it comes to leadership parity in representation in race and gender. Now, of course, we saw a complete sea change on the Boston City Council.
Right.
And we also have seen increased representation in our state legislature. More work remains to be done, but the simplest way to say, what is it that I do, is that serving on the Oversight and Reform Committee, you know, my job is oversight. So it's oversight of government. It's oversight of the pharmaceutical industry.
Holding accountability. It's accountability.
It's oversight and accountability. And then with financial services, again, we address everything from housing to student debt to the racial wealth gap to our financial institutions. And that's just very top line. But I set federal policy. Now, somebody will say, well, you might introduce more bills, but how many of them have been passed? Well, we had a Democratic majority in the House. But we did not have a majority in the Senate. And I actually have been successful in advancing amendments and in getting bills reported out of the House. But because we were not in the majority in the Senate, those things languished.
Because what people don't know is it goes from the House to the Senate back to the House.
Correct.
So and then it goes to Pennsylvania Avenue.
Exactly. So what happens is, if you look at like the American Rescue Plan, the relief package that we just passed, the House has we have the Democratic majority, although it's a slim margin. It's not as decisive as it was in the previous Congress. So we fought for, progressives like myself led the fight to secure things in this relief package that would finally meet the scale and scope of the crisis, right? Everything from paid leave to a $15 minimum wage to canceling a student debt to canceling rent and mortgage. We fought for all these things. And so we were robust and big, but when it gets to the Senate, because it's a 50-50 split, it gets watered down in order for them to pass it out of the Senate and then to come back to the House.
That's right. That's right. And I think people just aren't understanding. And I love that you continue to educate every time that you come out, because what people don't know, and Liz Miranda spoke on this when she came on PNP a couple of weeks ago, people sneak things into amendments.
Excuse me, you got an acronym now?
Listen, hey, we're branding. You're branded.
You know, let me just say happy Women's History Month to you.
Thank you.
You're doing your thing. Thank you for creating this platform.
Thank you.
You know, it is so accessible, and your audience just continues to grow. So I just want to say thank you.
Y'all shared it today, and I got like 88 new followers. I was like, let's look at God. Won't he do it? So Liz came on and said, sometimes people sneak things into amendments, and the original bill may not be what you thought it was going to be. And sometimes you have to vote against that. So I want to be clear to the audience that it's not necessarily that people are just saying, I don't want to vote against this. It's when you're intentional about what you're doing, you do look at the fine print, and you want to make sure that your constituents are being taken care of. And sometimes things stall because you have some people trying to sneak things in and not get their way.
Like I said, hurt and harm has been legislated.
Yes.
So you have God and the devil are in the details.
Yes.
And that was one of the lessons that I learned in Congress, because you guys, at any one time, there are 12,000 pieces of active legislation. Okay. And so often you come to the floor and we have what we call whips. It's their job to whip up the vote to make sure, you know, you hit what you need to in order to.
Those are your hype men, if I need to break it down for y'all, those are your hype men.
Yeah, that's a good, yes, that's a good analogy. But, you know, you would come to the floor and the whips would you know, oftentimes they would just tell you how to vote. And so, you know, this was not anything that we're going to do. So even though it's exhaustive for my team and it's laborious, we are going to read the fine print, because we know that things do get snuck in. And I'm not going to say that everyone has malicious intent.
Sure.
They just have an agenda that's consistent with the people who elected them. And I have an agenda that's consistent with the people who elected me.
That's right.
And so that's why when I continue to do the work of closing the racial wealth gap, or of addressing the Black maternal mortality crisis, or introducing baby bonds legislation, or the People's Justice Guarantee, or a federal job guarantee.
Run the list, sis, run the list.
Happening a just immigration system. I'm authoring responsive legislation to the needs of the people who sent me to Washington. And so I want to say, listen, we don't want this stuff to be confusing. If it's not clear to you what I'm doing on your behalf, I am accountable to you. Just call my office. And, and we'll give that number in a moment. But, if you have a question about the American Rescue Plan, what it means for you, how to access your stimulus check, if you're eligible, how to access your unemployment benefits, what does this child tax credit mean? What is that impact on your household? This is our job. This is what we're here for.
Yeah. So I want to switch a little bit and talk about some of the social unrest that's happened in the country. And most recently, what we saw in Georgia, where 8 people were killed, 6 of them were of Asian descent. Being Black, our everyday walk is a walk in, are we coming home at night? Are men coming home at night? Are we being profiled? You've been very vocal about racism and how it's either affected or infected our country. And I like to say infected because it's a taught behavior. People aren't born racist. But once they are taught that kind of hate, they infect the people around them with it. Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like for you as the only person of color in the delegation? And I say that because I often, when I hear people talking about Ayanna Pressley and the work that she's doing, I often say it's so unfair for us to put all of our burdens on you to lead the race and to be the voice of the race and to be the voice of women. It's kind of an unfair position to put you in. I know you happily take it on, but it would be great to have some help, I'm sure. So can you talk a little bit about from the lens that you sit in right now as a Congresswoman, as a brown-skinned Black girl? And I want to make that clear to people because we have some intra-racism too that plays a part in how we are viewed, how we are profiled. Can you talk to us a little bit about what this country and where we are now, what it means to the work that you're doing, how the work that you're doing is going to go forward, knowing that this is a cloud that still hangs over this country. And there are definitely people with the attitude that they're never going to get past being racist. They're just stuck in their ways, and that's fine. I don't want to be around those people. But can you talk to us a little bit about that?
So first, I just want to say, so far as the responsibility that is at my feet and on my shoulders, the journey and the work is long. Coretta Scott King reminds us that, justice is earned every generation. So, I don't have the luxury of being apathetic or being cynical. And fortunately, my genes have blessed me with a strong back and broad shoulders. So it's nothing that I can't handle. And if y'all think I'm not shouldering the weight well, you can let me know that too. But, I knew exactly what I was walking into. And what I will say is that I cannot believe, or I can, but it's infuriating, that it took an insurrection and a violent mob of white supremacists seizing the Capitol, causing trauma, injury, and loss of life, seeking to interrupt the peaceful transfer of power, an attempted coup, to obstruct our ability to ratify the Electoral College, all happened because of the perpetuating of a big lie, and that was a voter fraud. But the fact that it took a violent mob of white supremacists seized the Capitol, and the murder of those 8 AAPI women, I'll add them to this as well, for many to appreciate for the first time the threat that white supremacy is to every American life and our democracy. Several weeks ago, I did a panel with Dr. Ibram Kendi, and he was talking about how there's like racism that people can immediately identify as evil and distance themselves from.
Right.
And there's a more, casual and pervasive racism that people actively participate in.
That's right.
Completely clueless about.
Yes,
so
yes.
when you see what happened at the Capitol, or you see what happened in Atlanta, and you say, that is just pure evil. Right. I'm not like that. When you are complicit, and mind you, you are complicit when you are not seeking to actively dismantle.
That's right.
Systemic and structural racism, for which white supremacy is the host community.
Ooh.
Systemic and structural racism lives and thrives within white supremacy. So if you're not seeking to actively dismantle that, and for me, that's through lawmaking, okay? Yeah. That's what I'm focused on. People ask me all the time, was I afraid on January 6th? I'm a Black woman in America. I'm a Black bald woman in America. So the fear is a conflated part of my identity as a Black woman. How I show up in the world is disruptive and threatening and intimidating to many. What do you do when your very existence is the resistance? So as I said earlier, the only receipts that matter in this moment are policies and budgets. And I'm not saying that for the world, I'm saying that for myself too.
That's right.
And that's why I do the work that I do. So let me just give some examples on the racial justice space, if you'll allow me. So
use the platform.
Okay, so one of the things that I want to lift up again is I've been championing the need to cancel student debt. And I know you all saw a town hall, and perhaps you're under the impression that President Biden does not have the authority to cancel student debt by executive action. That is inaccurate. Congress gave him the authority through the Higher Education Act by executive action, which is a stroke of a pen. He just writes it. He can cancel student debt. Now he's agreed to cancel student debt at $10,000 broad-based across the board, but that's just interest rate for most, that's earned interest for most people. What I'm advocating for and have written legislation for is to cancel $50,000. And I'm doing that in partnership with Senator Warren and also with Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Representative Omar. Now that is a racial justice issue. I'm gonna tell you why. Because of redlining, our families were denied the ability to build generational wealth, okay? And so 85% of Black students feel they have no choice but to take out loans. I was one of them. And we're 5 times more likely to then default on those loans.
That's right.
Also one of them.
Right.
And Black women are the most educated and also have the highest debt.
Yes.
So when the world is saying, thank you, Black women, for what you do at the ballot, thank you for what you do on the ballot.
Right.
I'm saying, save your words of appreciation. Policy is our love language. Cancel student debt. This is an economic justice issue, and I do see it as a racial justice issue. Now, so again, we're calling on President Biden by executive action to cancel $50,000 worth of debt.
Yep.
But I've also introduced legislation twice to do that very thing.
Excellent.
Okay, secondly, Senator Cory Booker and I reintroduced our baby bonds bill. And what that is depending on, so for the lowest income brackets or socioeconomic status, when a child is born, we will set up a baby bond, a seed account at their birth. Okay. Over 18 years, depending on where you fall in the income bracket, we will put deposits into that account every year.
Oh, I love that.
When you turn 18, you get to access that account, and we have designated 3 allowable uses for those funds.
Okay.
Home ownership, higher education, and starting a business. Okay? So that's all equity and wealth building. And I want to tell you, there's actually bipartisan interest and appetite for our baby bonds bill. Okay, so that's another, so cancel student debt, baby bonds. On the financial services committee, we know that Black home ownership is the lowest it's been since fair housing laws were introduced.
Yes.
So that's in 6 decades. So when you talk about that median wealth gap in Boston of $8 versus $247,000, that has everything to do with home ownership.
Yes.
So we need to modernize the Community Reinvestment Act. So what does that mean? That means that we can no longer have policies that are not race conscious. That's because right. Our banks continue to pass examinations saying that they're not practicing redlining. 98% of them pass examinations saying that they're not practicing redlining, but we know they are.
Right. So
we need to modernize the Community Reinvestment Act, and we need to be race specific and conscious.
Yes.
So I'll stop there, but I mean, I've got a laundry list.
Listen, and we will have you tell people how they can get in touch with your office. But I have one last question before we let you go as we come up on the hour.
Okay.
You know that the city is about to have the most epic mayoral race in its history. Yeah. And you know, obviously, you know, you've hit so many historical points. What advice would you have for women of color running in elected offices? Now, we saw what Stacey Abrams did, and shout out to Queen Stacey for turning Georgia on its head. But as someone who went from being a staffer into an elected official, what advice would you have for women of color who want to jump in and run? What are top 3 things that you think they need to be successful and hit the ground running?
Oh my goodness. Well, it's 7 o'clock. How many minutes you gonna give me?
Well, listen, I can do this all night. I got more of this.
Okay. Well, I want to be mindful of folks' time because it is Friday night, you know, so hopefully we can just do another 5 or 7 minutes here, if that's okay. Yeah. So my first advice that I would give is run your race. And I'll give you an example. Back in the day when I want to say, Jaquetta, I'm following your wellness journey. I'm inspired by you, sis.
Thank you.
But
Thank
not
you.
getting
28 pounds down, y'all.
Listen, I know today was leg day. I'm following your journey. You're working it out. You know, so I'm getting back into the rhythm, but I'm not all the way there yet. Okay.
That's okay. Come on over when you're ready, sis.
Okay. But what I wanted to say about that is back in the day when I had a trainer and was, you know, making great progress in my own wellness journey. I remember being on the treadmill and I was running and I was feeling really good about my progress, right? No one else around me knows my journey or the progress I've made, but I was feeling myself. My running form was good. I had a cute workout outfit on, you know, my breathing was good and I was really feeling myself. And then a sister got on the treadmill next to me and I was more impressed with her running form and with her exercise outfit. And I was so busy watching her and comparing myself to her that I fell on that treadmill and I cracked my front tooth.
Message.
And I do believe that is a metaphor.
Yes.
Run your own race. Do not look to the left. Do not look to the right. Stand in your truth. Offer your vision for the city and run your race. The other advice that I would give is keep your word. If you are fortunate enough to be elected, keep your word. The people have given you a mandate. There's already such a deficit of trust in government.
Yes.
Keep your word. And the third thing, and the only policy thing that I'm going to offer, because it should go without saying, that I want them to be urgent and comprehensive and unapologetic in the work of racial justice, and specifically addressing the plight of Black and brown and marginalized communities and doing something, hold on. Somebody doesn't know I'm on Politics and Prosecco.
Oh, okay, and we need to talk about that person.
But listen, it should go without saying that they need to do something about wealth building in a real way. And that's everything from home ownership to contracting to making sure that the 40% of Black businesses that have been projected to remain permanently shuttered post-COVID, that they are doing something about that. But I'm not going to unpack all of that. I'm giving you 3 things because that's what you asked for. Run your own race. Don't look to the left or the right. stand in your truth, offer your vision for the city. Secondly, keep your word.
Yes.
And thirdly, because you said 3 things, so the other stuff was just background.
Okay.
Fix Madison Park. Okay?
I can't even. You know what? You are just giving me all the vibes right now. Talk about that, though.
I'm going to say we have all failed Madison Park.
That's right.
We have all failed Madison Park.
That's right.
Every mayoral cycle, people come up and say, this is going to be their priority. Fix Madison Park. I got a laundry list of things I could go through.
Right.
Some of it I've enumerated, passively there, but those are the 3 that I'm going to lift up. Now, the other thing is, because I do want to make sure that your audience has the information they need on the American Rescue Plan. Okay. So really quickly, I'm not going to walk through the top lines. This isn't a one-off, Jaquetta, please have me back.
Of course. Listen, anytime.
Okay. But I'm just going to speak about relief, because that's what people really care about. Okay. So survival checks started going out last weekend. I call them survival checks and not stimulus checks, because at this point, you received 1 check for $1,200, 1 for $600, and now 1 for $1,400. So the federal aid has never kept pace with the demand of the hurt. The federal aid stopped coming, but the bills didn't stop coming. Okay?
That's right.
So I continue to fight for $2,000 reoccurring survival checks for the duration of the crisis, because we know people need those funds to pay for diapers, life-saving medication, to remain safely housed, to keep groceries on the table. Right? Because we're still in the midst of a pandemic, y'all. I'm excited folks are getting vaccinated, but we are still in a pandemic, and new variants are emerging every day. So I continue to fight for $2,000 survival checks for the duration of the crisis, and for them to be retroactive. But in the here and now, what progressives were able to get in this bill, because they didn't even want to do that initially, was a $1,400 check, okay? So folks should have already been receiving those. For single filers making up to $75,000, and then you phase out after that, okay?
Okay.
So so you should have been receiving those. Also, you can check the status of your payment for your stimulus check or your survival check at the IRS website, which is irs.gov/coronavirus/getmypayment.
And I'll put that in the comments, y'all.
Okay. If you have issues accessing your stimulus check or survival check, please call my office, my district office, at 617-850-0040, and we'll look into your specific case. Now, for the Department of Unemployment Assistance, we have added an additional $300 to what you were already collecting from unemployment. And we've extended unemployment until September 6th.
Wow. Okay. Not enough people knew that.
If you have problems accessing your unemployment benefits, you can call the department directly at 877-626-6800. Again, that's 877-626-6800. And again, unemployment benefits have been extended through to September 6th with a weekly supplemental benefit of $300. Now, we also included a child tax credit. So families with children will receive a $3,000 tax credit per child.
Wow, that's big.
And $3,600 per every child under the age of 6. And these are fully refundable.
Wow.
Okay? So those are the top lines in terms of direct relief. I also want you to know in terms of eligibility, 4 things that are very important for you to know. Mixed status families who had been excluded from every bit of relief are eligible now for stimulus or survival check.
Can you tell people what a mixed status family is?
Right. So there are families where you might have someone who's an asylum seeker or or a TPS holder or a DACA recipient or a DED. And then you have someone who is who's undocumented. It's just the status, the immigration status of the family is mixed. Okay. And so if you have an I-10 number and you were in a mixed status family, you are now eligible for a stimulus check or survival check. That had previously not been the case. Also, adult dependents are eligible. That is a major disability justice issue that had not previously been the case. The other thing is that I fought for, once again, to ensure that incarcerated men and women, you are eligible. Your families they can contact my office to understand how to apply for your stimulus check. We supported a number of impacted families in making sure that their incarcerated loved one access their stimulus check so they could put money on their books and also help their family to pay for rent. Now, on the payroll protection program, two things. If you have a query, but you have never been convicted of fraud and you own a small business, this is the first time you will now be eligible for the payroll protection program.
Wow.
Again, if you have
that's huge.
If you have a query, but you've not been convicted of fraud, you are eligible for the payroll protection program. Furthermore, there is a 2-week grace period for small businesses with 20 employees or less, where you are getting to apply before anyone else does. That is major, because our businesses, our beauty salons, our barbershops, our boutiques, our restaurants, many of
small business community
employees or less are micro businesses, right?
Yeah.
Truly the life's blood, right? They hire locally. They hire those with barriers to employment, those with employees, immigrants, those businesses that have all been struggling to remain afloat, those restaurants that I fought so hard to expand. We also have major funds in here to support our restaurants. So if you guys have questions about how restaurants are benefiting, how to access your payroll, the PPP program, we're going to be doing teletown halls, webinars. I can be on as I can with the vote schedule, but also members of my staff. I want to highlight Art Gordon in my
shout out to Art,
who's my senior advisor and who is a lead point for Black businesses, and also working closely with my district director, Eric White, when it comes to the American Rescue Plan. Colin Remmel does all our constituent casework, okay? Eddie Rupia handles our immigration and housing cases. But again, I gave you the number earlier. She's dropping it in the chat as well.
Yes.
So as you have constituent casework needs about anything, or you want to know how to access your stimulus check or unemployment benefits or the payroll protection program under the American Rescue Plan, just call our offices. And Jaquetta, speaking of Madison Park, I want folks to know when it comes to our schools, they are applying the Title I formula, which means the poorest schools will get the most money in the American Rescue Plan to support their safely reopening.
Look at that. So look at that. I mean, listen, you guys, she just literally laid out everything that she's doing. There should be no question. I am going to put all the information of how you can contact the Congresswoman's office, all the information about where you can find out information about the stimulus on our Politics and Prosecco page. I want to thank you for coming on. I adore you. I live for you, sis. Thank you so much for amplifying what you do. And amplifying those around you, because you do that often. And I don't think enough people know that. So I want to thank you for coming on. I also want to shout out Conan for hooking me up as well. He's often, sending little gems. So again, thank you for coming on. If there's anything else that we can do for you, if we can amplify a message, I'm happy to do that.
The only thing that I want folks to know is that when it comes to this virus, it is still serious. We are still in a pandemic. Please continue to protect yourself. And getting a vaccine is a personal choice.
Have you been vaccinated yet?
Yes, but consult your healthcare provider. And the other thing I want you to know is that when it comes to guarding against the practice of vaccine redlining and ensuring that our communities are getting the funds that they need for equitable vaccine access and distribution, and also a public health response, that's also an issue that I led on. Previously, Jaquetta, they were only collecting age and gender data when it came to coronavirus infections, hospitalization, and death rates. We fought for them to collect racial demographic data. That's now required. And so we know that which gets measured gets done. We knew anecdotally that our communities would be hardest hit, but having that data helps us to marshal and direct the resources. So we have now also asked for, and that was included in the American Rescue Plan, that's my legislation, that they collect anonymized racial demographic data for vaccine recipients.
Okay.
And by having that transparency, that helps us to get the funds directed so that we can do the things that Rep. Miranda and I talk about and others, having mobile units, supporting community-led efforts like what is happening at the Reggie Lewis Center.
Yes.
Shout out to the Black Boston COVID Coalition and all of those folks. So I just want to make sure folks know when it comes to banging the drum of equity, as the only person of color in this delegation, that is what I've led on and I will continue to lead on. And I love you, sis. Thank you all. Happy Women's History Month.
Happy Women's History Month to you.
And cheers to all of y'all.
Yes, come on.
And
Thank
cheers
you for
my baby.
Yes.
Who was
there? We will have you back on sometime this year. And we know you're busy, so we want to let you go and let you get back to the work at hand. And again, thank you so much for living your truth, living your authentic self. And I adore you. You know that.
Love you too. Thanks, everyone. Keep tuning in.
Yes, come on. All right, everybody. So we are coming to a close on Politics and Prosecco. I want to shout out Ernest Offley again for sponsoring Drinks with Your Enclave, Black-owned, LGBT-owned business. So y'all go on his Instagram at Drinks with Your Enclave and order up some of these, y'all. I'm done with the tequila one. Just done with it. It is so good.
I'm gonna check out the mule. I've been following you on Instagram.
I did the Vineyard Mule. This should have been 3 bottles. You can see it's just one. Okay. It's Friday night and it's been a week so far. So again, everybody, thank y'all for tuning in. Again, we'll put the information for the Congresswoman in there, and cheers to everybody. Have a great weekend. Bye.
Bye, y'all.